It doesn't matter what type of real estate you invest in. I'm a big proponent that you need to know how to run your own numbers. Whatever you do, do not let anybody else run your numbers. It's gotta be from you because you're the one who's investing. And it takes a while to get comfortable knowing how to do it, but we'll talk about that as well. There are lots of benefits to investing in real estate, especially short-term rentals, including the cash flow, the tax advantages, the lifestyle it gives you. So we'll talk about all of those things as well. Welcome to Chai and Cabins, where we talk all things entrepreneurship, short-term rentals, real estate, and business. My name is Rashmi, like don't rush me, and it's my pleasure to welcome you onto this podcast. Hi guys, welcome to Chai and Cabin. Today I want to walk you through what it's like to start an Airbnb business. The whole process from start to finish. I'll literally start from the time you go, hey, I maybe want to buy an Airbnb, all the way to the time where you're like, I've had my first guest. Every single step, that's what's coming up next. Now, before we get started, I do want to hit on a few points just so you guys know where I'm coming from. I will interchangeably call them Airbnb and short-term rentals, and I know the appropriate ways to call them short-term rentals, and I get it, but when you're starting out, it's really easy to call it an Airbnb and be on the Airbnb platform because it makes it so easy to get started on your hosting journey. I'll break all of that down as we go forward. I am recording this in September, so interest rates in the US are currently pretty high, and we don't know what the market is going to do either. We don't know if prices are going to go down, they're going to go up, and I'll share my opinions about this as well. As a disclaimer, because I have to do these legal disclaimers, these are just my thoughts and opinions. This is not constructed as legal advice, as final advice, blah, blah, blah. Let's get to the fun stuff. One of the main things I like to tell everybody is always proceed with caution. You are buying real estate, it is expensive, there's lots of money that's coming in and out, and it's kind of scary. So until you're 100% comfortable making the investment, don't do it, guys. Until then, let's keep studying. A little bit about me. I opened my first restaurant in 2014 when I graduated from college, and then evolved that into several different concepts. I do talk a lot about my restaurant, so if you guys are interested in checking it out, I'll have a link below once we get some videos posted for that. In 2020, my restaurant, just like thousands of other businesses, got in, and we went to limited hours with COVID. With all of this, I had all this free time on my hands. I didn't really know what to do with it, and I always loved hospitality, and I loved real estate, and I was kind of trying to figure out how can I merge these two together. And I was seeing everybody kind of work from home, work remotely. I was like, how cool would it be if I could encompass everything I love and be able to do it from anywhere in the world? And that's what got me started in real estate. I found lots of podcasts that I listened to, and I learned the business. I'll talk about that a little bit more as we kind of go along in the video. I own several short-term rentals, and I also manage a lot for other people. So safe to say I see a lot of deals coming in and out of here. As an investor foremost, I like to come at real estate and hospitality from an owner's perspective. What deals make sense in terms of cap rate, in terms of getting your money back, your cash on cash return, while also providing excellent hospitality service to your guests. Of course, I analyze a lot of deals daily. In fact, it takes me close to about 2-3 seconds to see a deal, know the market, and see if our numbers are going to work once I know all the details of that market. And of course, I'll break all of that down as we move forward in the video. And of course, I am a super host on Airbnb and VRBO, and I'll talk about how you guys can get there too, and then how my journey has progressed while being super host. So first things first, what I want to focus on is where to buy a short-term rental. I'll talk about how I found my very first deal, how I understood the numbers, why I decided to invest where I did, and how I started growing my portfolio. I'll also talk about how long it took me to manage the day-to-day aspects of having a short-term rental, how much time it will take. I know a lot of people have full-time jobs, so hey, can I manage my full-time job and still do this? Maybe you have kids, you have a big family, all of those fun things. It doesn't matter what type of real estate you invest in. I'm a big proponent that you need to know how to run your own numbers. I'll be happy to make another video breaking down how exactly I do my numbers, but whatever you do, do not let anybody else run your numbers. It's gotta be from you because you're the one who's investing. And it takes a while to get comfortable knowing how to do it, but we'll talk about that as well. There are lots of benefits to investing in real estate, especially short-term rentals, including the cash flow, the tax advantages, the lifestyle it gives you. So we'll talk about all of those things as well. The fact that you're here today, great job. You took the very first step that it takes, and we're gonna get started. I'm gonna go through this video step by step, and if at any point you feel like you need more information or I wasn't clear on something, just drop a comment below and I'll make a separate video and link to it talking about whatever you're asking to. All right, step 1, your vision. I find that so many people overlook this process. What is your life going to look like when you buy your first short-term rental? Let's talk 30 days out, 60 days out, 90 days out, and then kind of a year and 3 years from now. I feel so many people overlook this part and just jump right into the numbers, but it's important to step back and understand, why are you buying this asset? None of it has to be complicated. It's a really simple question to ask yourself and maybe a spouse or your family if they're going to be involved in this business. And make no mistake, there's a lot of work that goes in sort of in the upfront area, especially when you're setting up, all that kind of good stuff. For example, your vision could be that in a year, your property is maybe making you $1,000 a month. Or maybe it's breaking even, but you bought in a place that you love to vacation at, and every month you know your mortgage is paid for. And you want this to take less than an hour a week, and you want to be able to take your family and your friends every single year to this property. And that's why you bought it. And that is perfectly fine. For others, it may be, I have got to make $3,000 a month, and this is a purely financial decision. The tax benefits make no difference to me. For others, it could be, hey, I'm a high income earner and I need the tax benefits. There's lots of reasons why you could do this, but knowing exactly why you specifically want to do it is really important, and I recommend writing it down, because if not, a lot of this can get overwhelming really quickly. It is important that you have this vision, because that's going to affect how you run the numbers for this property. For example, if your goal is to make the highest cash flow possible, maybe you're willing to self-manage and build your team from the ground up. But if you are looking for maybe a tax depreciation standpoint, that's the reason you're buying the real estate, or if you just want a vacation home that you can take your family a few times out of the year and have the mortgage paid out, it's better to look for a property management company that can do that and that has the support of finding handymans, cleaners, they're booking your calendar, they're making sure your property's in top-notch condition. The last thing you want to do is take your family on vacation and end up at your property and find out that the pipes are not working, or there's mice, or it's gross. There's a lot of work that goes into managing a property. Can it be done? Yes. Can you self-manage? Yes. Will it take time? Yes. So it just depends where you are on your vision. There's no right or wrong answer. It just depends on you. Now, if you guys are considering a property management company, I do have to shamelessly plug my own property management company, and I'll have a link below here. So give us a call if you're in these areas, and we'd love to help you. All right. Now that you guys have your vision, let's move to part 2 or step 2. Once you have your vision and you know what you want to do, I highly recommend looking for free information you can find. So the way I got started is I literally went to the Apple podcast, and I searched, I literally put in like short-term rentals, and I found all of these podcasts, and I just hit follow. And I started listening every morning and every night on my drive to work and on my drive back from work. What were people talking about? And as I started clarifying my vision, like I decided I wanted to self-manage, I decided I wanted to be involved, I decided I was going to manage properties for other people, I made sure to select those podcasts that helped me build that. If you're looking more at like, hey, I'm going to have a property management company that's going to manage it for me, which is fantastic, but then listen to more podcasts where people talk about, hey, all I do is focus on buying really great real estate and I outsource everything else. That is genuinely the way to grow in this business. But hit up all of the free resources you can find. There are also lots of Facebook groups you can join that have information about how you can get started, which markets are good, and just get a feel for kind of, hey, do I even like? One great tip I have is I have a podcast and I interview tons of great people. I have the link below here and in the description as well. So you guys can just start listening to those people, and they literally talk about where they grew up, how they found their first deal, how they started growing their journey. That's another free resource that I think could be really helpful. My aim with my podcast is to inspire you and educate you. So at any point, if you feel there's a guest you would like for me to bring on, drop me a comment below. We'll get them on here. Move on to step 3. You gotta pick a location. And at first, don't be too picky about this. Location, location, location. Invest in a destination that is a vacation market. Trust me, these are gold mines, especially in a time where people like to stay in staycations, but also drive out just a little bit to have some fun. I always recommend vacation markets, and that is primarily where I personally invest, and there's several reasons for this. Now, you can most certainly invest in urban markets, so like big cities, and there is demand for it, but the research process is a little bit different. I personally have not invested in any major cities, so I don't know what it's like. So I'm just going to talk about my personal experience investing in vacation markets. So what is a drivable vacation market? Think time in your life, maybe your girlfriends called you up and went, hey, I just want to do a getaway for the weekend, something super close to us. So a vacation market is 1 or 2 hours away from ideally where you're living, or it's a market that's in, if you live in a big city, maybe think 1 or 2 hours away, where are you? So for example, if you live in LA, I know Joshua Tree is a big vacation market for you guys. If you literally chime into Google vacation markets in the US, you'll come up with these huge lists. There's so many of them. And a lot of these markets you will probably have never heard of. I know I didn't, because they are regional. So the people who live in these big cities, they know about these markets, but they're not big sexy destinations like Hawaii or New York. The second reason I like to invest in vacation markets is in these markets, they are used to having a lot of tourists come by. They have been vacation markets for years, in fact, decades. So a lot of their economy runs on people coming into their community. So they tend to be friendlier towards people who have short-term rentals, who have little properties that they manage, and they encourage it because it helps boost their economy. And in an era where you guys are seeing regulations go up left and right in this market, and we'll talk about regulations in a minute here. But when you're trying to pick a market, you want to make sure that the regulations are friendly and that it's easy to get a permit. And I, in fact, argue that you should go into a vacation market that already has regulations because it's so much easier to navigate the process. So how did I find my first vacation market? My friends actually called me up right outside of COVID, and they said, hey, we're taking this little birthday trip. Do you want to join us? So my then boyfriend, now husband, we went up to a little area called Fredericksburg in Texas. Now, if you don't live in Texas, you've probably never heard of this area. And Fredericksburg was just right under an hour or two for most people that live in Texas. Of course, Texas is huge. So like if you live in the boonies, maybe it's 7 hours away for you. I don't know. But the point is, it is, a quick destination for a lot of people. And we picked this Airbnb to stay at. And, there were maybe like 10 or 15 of us. And we all chipped in, $200 for the weekend to stay, which was really affordable. But I was like, wait, if I made $200 and everyone else here paid that much, then whoever owns this Airbnb just made $2 or $3 on a weekend. If that can cover my mortgage payment, the rest of my weeks are going to be great. I was like, this is a great model. And that's actually what sparked me to start looking into Fredericksburg. And that's how I actually found my first deal. The other way to find a vacation market is to figure out, where do you like to travel? And this helps in two things. One, as a local, what works? Like, what are people looking for when they come to this market? Like, I knew when I went to Fredericksburg, it's a wine country market because there were wineries all around, but I experienced it. So when people ask me when they stay at my properties, Rashmi, what's the best winery to go to? Or where should I have dinner? Or I'm Indian. And so a lot of Indian families will come and go, Rashmi, is there an Indian restaurant here? And I'm like, no, which is why I put an Instant Pot at all of my properties so that you can make rice and dal and other Indian foods. Because I have a family who runs into this issue. Or I highlight vegetarian restaurants for them. And I go, hey, maybe these restaurants are advertised being vegetarian, but I've taken my family there. I have grandparents that are vegetarians. Here's where we took them. And so you have kind of this personal connection, which is great for hospitality. The other part of going into a market that is a vacation market, maybe you've taken it with your family, is it's really easy to understand what that market needs. And I'll show you a great example. I'll have a link below here. My friend Nene did a podcast with me, and the link is down below here. And in that, she talked about, she went to Fredericksburg with her family, and they were always trying to find a property that had a pool, and she would go to this community pool. Well, she realized, what if she bought a property and built a pool on her property, then her family could go and they would have a pool. And she figured that if she had this problem, there must be lots of other families who come to Fredericksburg who are willing to pay a little bit extra to have a private pool that not 500 people haven't been to or in currently. And so you become an expert at figuring out there's a problem, there's a niche, how can I meet it? And that can provide to be highly profitable for you. The third reason I like investing in drivable markets or vacation markets is I wanted to learn how to self-manage my properties. It was important to me. So I specifically picked a market that was an hour and a half away from me because that meant I had to learn how to self-manage. But in the worst case scenario possible, like if something really happened and I had to go, I could drive up and handle it. Now, I know that's not possible for everybody. Maybe you live in a city or town that's already really expensive. There's maybe not a vacation market 1 to 2 hours away from you. I understand that. And so for those scenarios, maybe you consider hiring a property management company first, buy a good property, do that, watch how they do it, and then maybe in a year you can learn to self-manage. There's lots of different ways you can take real estate and it's flexible. So knowing all of your options and kind of tools in your belt and knowing what to use when is a really good strategy. For us, we started investing 1 to 2 hours away from us, and once we got that down, we went all the way out into Tennessee and bought our cabin out there because I knew by that time I knew how to do it. And so it gets you ready for kind of the next step in your journey. Today, I could buy a property literally anywhere in America and not blink an eye. I know how to find the team, but that will come with time, and we'll talk about that for you guys as well. So finding the right market shouldn't take more than a month or so. Like I said, don't overthink it because it's important you start understanding how to run the numbers and figure out if the market is good or not. You spend all of your time finding the perfect market, and then it takes you, say, several months, and you haven't run a single number or deal yet. And maybe you run 3 deals and you're like, Rashmi, this doesn't make any money, and now I have to go find another market. Just we're taking up way too much time upfront. So what I say is go ahead and find a market. Don't overthink it. Step 4, once you have picked a market, you've got to know the law. Regulations are popping around all over the place, so make sure you are on the right side of the law. This is not a business, and I will say this literally for any business, do not fly under the radar. It's not a good way to do business. It's not fun. You're going to be stressed. So don't do it. This is a really fun hospitality. You get to make such great memories for people, provide such an incredible service. So why should you feel stressed about that? So once you pick your market, my first 2 calls are to the county and to the city, depending on where the property is. And I ask them, do you have any short-term rental regulations? Are you planning to put any in? How do you guys feel about short-term rentals? Are you scared? Like, let me understand. And the way you find out the county and the city's website is literally just type in, Fredericksburg County, Gillespie County, whatever it is, and just start talking to people. I also like to join Facebook groups in these areas and kind of get the general sentiment from people. And you have to be a little bit careful because there's a lot of negative things that get posted in Facebook groups, but when you actually meet with people one-on-one, they're actually really nice. So kind of have to filter that out a little bit. The other thing you want to make sure you ask for is if there are regulations, what does it look like to get a permit? Are there any caps about how many nights you can rent it out? Do you have to live on site? You want to get all of these questions answered before you even start analyzing the market, because that will help build your criteria as to where you should buy a property, where you should look, and even within a market, kind of the sub-markets. Maybe you can buy in this pocket, but maybe not in this pocket. Maybe in this pocket, you have to be owner occupied. And there's so many different little things you always want to call and check and make sure. You always want to make sure your investment is safe and it's sound. So do not overlook this step. All right, moving on to step number 5. How are the other rentals performing? This is the fun part. Okay, so what we're going to do here is you want to look at other Airbnbs in the area and see how are they performing. How are they booked? How much are they charging per night? How much revenue can they make? And there's lots of resources out here. I'll talk about the free resources first, and then I'll get into the paid ones. I always like to start with the free resources because I look at so many markets, and I obviously can't buy data for every single one of them, but the free resource helps me kind of get good data, enough points where I can make a good guess. And then once I pick out a market, I'm like, I'm definitely going to invest in this market, then I'll go into the paid tools, pay for those, and make sure the data I'm reading on the free stuff correlates with the data I'm reading on the paid stuff. I hope that kind of makes sense. Now, the first thing once you go to Airbnb is you want to be really careful. A lot of people see a vacation market area with tons of listings and freak out and go, I will never do well here. I'll share an example with you. The Smoky Mountains of Tennessee is probably the hot spot for vacation rentals in the country. There's just so many of them. And if you literally check on Smoky Mountains, there's so many cabins out there. And if you're in these Facebook groups, you'll see everybody and their mom go, it's saturated, it's blah, 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 don't buy out here, there's too many. And yet, those people who are quiet and who have properties that are performing really well, you won't hear from them. So it's important in real estate that you always make your money on the purchase of the property. And I'll talk about this a little bit once we get to the property analysis section. So in the Smoky Mountains, when you go onto Airbnb and you see all of these listings that are there, your first thought is going to be, how am I ever going to stand out? And that is the exact right process. Because once you study a market and you understand what it is that the people that go there are looking for, and you buy the property at the right price, put in the right decor, you charge the right price, you are going to crush it. But it's important that you do the first 3 steps correctly to be able to make your money. There is an art and a science to real estate, especially in the hospitality space, which is where short-term rentals are. So you want to make sure you're blending those two in well. So I have 2 to 3 free favorite tools that I like to use, and I'll put the links down below so you guys don't have to worry about scribbling them down or anything, and you can access them easily. The first one is data.rabu.com. What I do is I pick a property address that I see on Zillow or whatever, copy it in there, look at all the listings that show up, and I open up every single Airbnb listing, and then I start studying the market, start seeing what listings are doing well. Is the listing actually booked? Sometimes if you see a listing where if you pick one, like if everything is blocked off, it probably means they're not operating on Airbnb, so I don't want to consider them. I'll start reading all the reviews. What do you guys like about this property? What do they not like? Why did they complain about that? How is the listing description? Would I book this property? That's a really important question to answer, because if you yourself wouldn't book this property, why in the world would you go out and buy a property that looks like it? But another good question to ask is, how could I elevate this property? Can I put in a hot tub? Can I put in a better design? Can I repaint the interior? Just stuff, little things like that make a huge difference, especially in the hospitality space. The second tool I really like is the Airbnb Rentalizer. I know they've recently made some updates to it, so I'm unsure if it's still free or if you got to pay a little bit. But it's a really good tool, again, just to get started. I also write awning.com, and then there's BNB Cal. I have all the links up here. You guys can check those out. And then on the paid stuff, I like to use AirDNA, and then I also like to get market dashboards from Pricelabs. Again, if you just Google those, you'll be able to find those, but I did add links here below as well. Let's talk about the elephant in the room. With interest rates soaring and the market being unpredictable, you might be wondering, is now the right time to buy, or should I wait? Real estate is a local game. With high interest rates, prices coming down, but maybe not as much as they should. Do not let anyone tell you that you should be buying real estate or that you shouldn't be buying real estate. Do your own research. For example, I found all of my properties, all of my short-term rentals on the MLS, and the MLS is sites like Zillow. Now, a lot of people will swear there's no good deals on the market and that you have to go to a wholesaler and use hard money and all these other things. And I just didn't feel comfortable doing that. So I didn't, and I still haven't. I just still find all of my deals on the market where anyone else can find them. So A, don't make this more complicated than it needs to be. And B, do not let anybody, especially somebody on YouTube, tell you what you should or shouldn't be buying. That is 100% your decision, and you should do what you feel comfortable doing. Step 6, finding your real estate agent. Your real estate agent will probably make or break your journey, so be sure to find a really good one, you guys. There are lots of really, really great realtors out there, so here's some of the questions I ask them, and this is where I find them. I'll start with where to find them, because you have to find them to ask them the questions. Duh. So I literally look for properties that I like as short-term rentals, and I look for the realtor, and then I'll just call them up and ask them about the property and ask them my usual questions. Now, as I've bought more and more real estate, I've gotten a little bit better at it, and so I will go into Facebook groups for that area and go, hey, are there any realtors that specialize in buying short-term rentals? Or I'll see or try to find other investors in the area and ask them which real estate agent did you use. And that usually gets me a good like bucket list of people I can find. You can also go to Instagram or Facebook and just type in like short-term rentals, your city, realtor, and usually you can find a few different agents that way as well. So here's my most popular questions to ask real estate agents. Do you own a short-term rental? Do you self-manage your short-term rental? How is it doing? And all the usual questions you would ask with that. Can you help me find a handyman, a cleaner? Now, I'm not trying to say they have got to own a short-term rental themselves, or what I'm asking them is, have they worked with other investors who maybe have done the same? Or do they have the experience? I do find that when I find real estate agents who have their own properties, they're a lot easier to find the rest of my team, which is the cleaners, the handyman, the local people in the area. I've worked with lots of real estate agents who don't have any short-term rentals as well, and they've connected me with other investors who have then helped me build my team. But when you meet an agent who understands short-term rentals, they also know how to run numbers. And like I said before, I don't let anyone else run my numbers except for me, but that at least gives them a little bit of a tighter criteria as to what property I'm trying to find. The other thing I like to ask realtors is, hey, can you connect me to other investors in the area? And this is ultimately like gold, because other investors are often really willing to share their experience, the good, the bad, and the ugly, but they also help build your team. And also when things go wrong, and I guarantee you things will go wrong, this is a really good support group of people to lead on. Now, the other way to find other investors in your market is, again, to go to these Facebook groups, type in your city investor short-term rentals, and you'll find lots of little groups. And on the off hand that there's not a Facebook group in your area for this, go ahead and create one and go ahead and find people to join your group, because then you could be the leader in your market for short-term rentals. Like I mentioned before, no one else should be ever running your numbers except you. So if you guys want me to make a detailed video about analysis or analyzing a short-term rental, just drop me a comment below. And if I make the video, I'll link it down below here. Step number 7, financing. 7 is my favorite number, and I love to get money to buy a house. So I like financing too, I guess. Let's get rolling, guys. So for financing, the first thing I like to tell people is don't go out and just talk to the first lender you know, especially if you're going to buy out of your state. There's no point in getting a pre-qualification or a pre-approval letter in California if you're going to buy a house in Tennessee and the bank in California does not lend in Tennessee. So I always recommend asking your real estate agent if they know or recommend anyone. And they'll let you know. Sometimes they may recommend local banks for you. Sometimes they may recommend national banks for you. Either way, depending on what they recommend, I always encourage you to ask a few key questions to every lender that you buy. Now, there are lots of products out there in terms of investment loans, commercial loans, vacation home loans. There could be seller financing, and the interest rates for a bunch of these could change, your down payment, and there's a whole bunch of stuff. The easiest way to do this is what I did, which is we just went down the rabbit hole of buying a 10% down vacation home loan. It was really easy. It's basically like applying for a regular home loan, and so you need stuff like your W-2, your pay stubs, your credit score, any other investments you have. And then most banks are able to do this at 10% down, but that's definitely a question I would ask your lender. And then the other things you want to ask them is, have they worked with people who have bought Airbnbs before in this area? Do they finance Airbnbs? How much down payment would you have to make? Obviously. What's the interest rate? Is it fixed? Is it on an arm? How about appraisers? Do they have any in the area? How long does it typically take to close? Lots of questions. You guys can Google it pretty easily. But you want to make sure you've talked to at least 3 to 5 lenders so you have a good area. Talk to a few locally, talk to a few nationally, and see where you fall and what you feel comfortable with. There are, again, a lot more financing options, like I talked about DSCR, seller finance. If you guys want me to do a video all about like all the different types of financings you can do, I probably won't be able to cover everything, but I can probably give you guys a good breakdown. So drop me a comment below and I'll link the video if I ever make it. Now, as we are investing, and I plead with you, please do your own due diligence when you go out and get a loan. There is a lot of unexpected costs that come with owning real estate. And one of the things I find on YouTube that people don't talk about is the risk of going out and buying real estate investments. It is lucrative, but please know there is a risk. And once again, you shouldn't just just trust somebody on YouTube who tells you to go out and buy real estate. So do your due diligence, especially if you're worried about losing your job, or you don't think you have enough money in reserve, or you're worried that the interest rate is going to make the deal barely cash flow, like you're right at the break even, and that doesn't make you comfortable. It is perfectly okay to walk away and use this time to study and get to know this asset class a little bit better. All right, step number 8, the math. So when you're looking at an Airbnb, it's like looking at any other business. It's going to be revenue minus expenses, and that's going to get you your bottom profit line. Now, there's some numbers that go into all of these 3 that are a little bit different from each other, but the basic principle is pretty much the same. So the best way to calculate revenue is to go to the free sites like Data-Rabu or Awning and kind of put in your property address, like the one you want to buy for the house, put in how many bedrooms it has, and then if you're going to add any amenities, there's a little section on the corner. If you guys want me to do a detailed breakdown on Rabu and how to use this free tool, drop me a comment below. I'll be more than happy to do that as well. And that will give you an approximate revenue, like top line number for the property as is. If you're going to add any amenities, of course, add those on there so you can see if it makes or breaks your numbers. Rabu specifically does not include any cleaning fees or taxes. So it's important to know when you're calculating your number as opposed to AirDNA, which includes everything in that big total amount. In terms of revenue, there are multiple sources of revenue. Obviously, you'll have your booking revenue from Airbnb, VRBO, direct bookings, but there are also upsells you can do. Like maybe you are pet friendly and you collect pet fees, so that is an upsell. Or maybe you have a bigger property that you're buying that hosts venues or has weddings on it. So that's another upsell. So when there's all these things, you want to make sure you're accounting for all of your revenue streams coming into the property. Expenses, your biggest one will probably be your mortgage. That is usually a big line item. And I always like to add it. I know in commercial real estate, people talk about cap rates and they'll talk about mortgages, and I understand it. But when you're looking as a personal investment, I think mortgage is a pretty big expense. So you should definitely have it on there. Apart from that, you're going to have little expenses like your electrical bill, your water bills, kind of all utilities, internet. You will have things like the cleaning expense. Now, on these sites, obviously the guests pay a cleaning fee and you pay a cleaner. So usually that evens out. And we, in fact, charge a little bit extra, like $10 extra or $5 extra, just something nominal when we charge the guests, because that helps cover all of our supplies, like, the coffee we provide, towels, just little things like that. And it's a revenue stream for us as well. The other thing you want to make sure you're budgeting for is expenses that come up. Now, there are people in and out of these properties all the time. And so there could be a scratch on the wall. There could be sheets that need to be replaced. So you just want to make sure you have enough money. One of my pro tips for this, guys, like this is the main thing basically, is I always ask my cleaners, hey, like, do you know any good handyman in the area? Because something will likely come up. And they'll usually say yes. A lot of them have spouses that are really good handymen. And usually I'll just, pay them $50, $100, $150 to fix little things for me. I don't let problems fester at any of my properties. I like to make sure they're in A1 condition at all times. Because A, guests are coming here to experience some award-winning hospitality, and 2, I always want my investments to look really nice. So if maybe I'm thinking about selling and I have a buyer coming in, I don't right away get a bill for 10 grand worth of, maintenance I could have done throughout the years on my properties. Okay, so once you have your revenue, your expenses, and then you hit your net profit, which is how much money you will make. Now, going back to net profit, it again goes back to your vision on this property. You may find a property where after you've paid the mortgage, it only breaks even, which means you've not made any money, but you also haven't lost any money. It's basically a big fat zero. But you may say, hey, that's all I need because my family loves to vacation in this area and I just need my expenses covered. Or you may say, hey, I don't mind if we're only making $500 because I bought this for a tax depreciation benefit. And this is a good place to park my money for the next few years. And in 3 years, I'm going to sell this property and that's where I will make my money. Or you may decide, hey, like this has got to make me several $1,000s and this property isn't going to do it. And that is perfectly okay. Whichever path you go down, just make sure it's the right one for you. My husband was nice enough and he actually made me a whole Excel sheet where I could put in like all of my numbers, like what is the purchase price, how much we pay monthly on the mortgage, what's the projected revenue, expenses. So I can see like our net profit, profit and if we're making this. If you guys would like a copy of that Excel sheet, just drop me a comment below. I'll be happy to share that as well. It's a completely free Excel sheet that you guys can use to analyze your numbers as well. It took me about 2 to 3 months to get really good at numbers. And guys, I've mentioned this before, I'm going to mention it again. Don't believe anyone else's numbers. Run your own analysis for your own deals. It's the most important thing. If you leave with anything today, leave with that. And it will take time to get good at this, but once you do, it's a skill that will serve you for a lifetime. I would literally get home from my Indian restaurant after having worked like a whole shift. So like I would go in at like 7 in the morning. I would work till about 9 in the morning. And then from 9 to 10, I'd take a little break at my restaurant, drink some coffee, relax for a little bit. And I would start browsing deals like on Zillow. And I would put in my notes, like these are my favorite deals. And then once I got done with my shift, if I was working evening, obviously I wouldn't get home till 7 or 8. But if I got home at 4, I would get home, pull up all the links that I had saved, and then go to my Excel sheet, go to Rabu, go to Owner, and do this over and over and over again. And your mind will start creating a picture where you're like, got it. So today when I jump on the market, for example, I invest in the Smoky Mountains of Tennessee. If I see a 3 price at a certain point, I know exactly how much it's going to make. It's a ballpark range, and I know how much more I can make if I put in a game room. And I know how much more I'll make if I put in a pool. And I know that if it doesn't have these things and it's at this price, even if I offer it at this, lower price, I'm not going to make any money on it. And I know that because I've studied that market over the course of several months. I have been doing this for about 3 years, and I will say my revenue projections have come in kind of where I expected. In some markets, it has been higher than I expected. And one of my key reasons for that is I am a really conservative investor. So I underestimate my revenue and I overestimate my expenses just to make sure there's enough spread in the deal for me to make money. For example, for my expenses, I'll probably usually put a 5 to 10% contingency. So if I think in a year a property is going to cost me, say, 30 grand worth of expenses, I'll put in another 10% on there, which is maybe an extra $3,000, and say this could be for something that comes up, maybe tree falls. And tree, by the way, is really expensive. If you need to like cut limbs or like remove a tree, like that's a really expensive, and then it could fall and hit on your roof, for example. And yes, you'll have insurance pay you out. And a lot of people will say, Rashmi, why don't you just get a home warranty? Well, 2 things. A, my guess, when there's a guest checking out at 11, there's another one coming at 4. I don't have time to call the home warranty company and wait for 2.5 weeks for them to schedule me in. I need things done on an instant. Number 2, people are like, why don't you call insurance? Again, it just takes way too much time for me to call it and put it in. So unless it's something major, I'm not gonna really worry about it. If you guys are enjoying this content, if you don't mind hitting the like and subscribe button down below, and if you guys don't mind sharing this with your friends, maybe people who are looking to buy their first Airbnb this year, that would really help me out. Step number 9, making the offer. So 2 things. Lowballing is not a sin. It is a negotiation strategy. So let's go. Making the offer is the most exciting and nerve-wracking part of this entire process. Your realtor should be guiding you on how to fill out a lot of the main forms for you and then send it over to you to DocuSign. In a lot of vacation markets like Destin in Florida or the Smoky Mountains in Tennessee, it's pretty typical that the place, especially if it used to be an Airbnb before, that it comes fully furnished. In other markets, you will find that is not the case. Now, the bank will never finance the furniture part of things, but if it's already included in the sales price, then they're not going to sweat too much about it. I like the properties that come already furnished. It actually drastically reduces my time in getting the property set up. But this again goes back to the design and the vision. Like, I have had properties where it came fully furnished and I've gone, not crazy about this design. It's grandma style, 1960s. Nothing's modern. Nothing's like how I want things to be. So I'm just going to sell everything, take that cash, and then I'm going to go get my own designer to design my properties. If the home doesn't come furnished, I highly recommend you ask for the big items. So like the refrigerator, washer and dryer. See where you can negotiate sort of in your contract. Here's the main thing about making your offer. The perfect deal does not exist, you guys. People, especially a lot of first-time investors, will wait around going, oh, this deal doesn't have the right couch, or oh, the cabinet colors are off on this deal. Talk to a contractor, get them out there, get them to give you a bid on how much it's going to cost, or if you have a handy spouse, ask them how much it will cost to do that and the time. and make it the way you want, but go ahead and put their offer in. Again, it's just like exercising your brain and being comfortable when this will work. There is a deal for you out there. It may not be perfect, but remember, diamonds are in the rough until they're polished. Number 10, once your property is under contract, the fun begins. The first thing I recommend you do is call an inspector. Your realtor should have recommendations on who to call, and make sure you get a thorough inspection done of the property. If you have a septic or a well system, which is pretty common in these vacation markets, I do recommend calling those companies and paying for an inspection there as well, because the last thing you want is for the well to dry out or the septic to have some major issue that you haven't thought about, and that could be thousands upon thousands of dollars. So currently I'm hearing you can close in about 30 to 45 days. So once you get to inspection, if you need to make any concessions, your realtor will walk you through all of those steps and processes. You should be good to move to the next step in this process. This is where I start to look for people in my market that could help build my team. So I'll start asking my lender, my realtor, literally anyone I can find, who's a great handyman, who's a good cleaner, who can help me if I want to put a hot tub in here and I need the electrical done, and start building your network, because the second we close, I want to have these people ready so we can get started on the property. This is the key in this part. A lot of people will start buying furniture in this section, and it makes sense because, hey, you only have, 15 days to close, 30 days to close. I personally don't do that, mostly because I'm worried something's going to happen at closing and last minute I have to walk away from the deal, and I don't want my garage filled with all this furniture that I just have to return. So I go ahead and add everything to my cart, like on Wayfair, on Amazon, on Walmart, and I wait for it, and the day I go and actually sign and the deal gets funded, I order everything. And this is the other reason you want to make sure you have a cleaner, because if you're like me and don't live anywhere near your properties, you need to be able to ship the items to someone else, and then they will then bring it to your property. Or you need to have a contact that if it gets shipped directly to your property, someone needs to be there to pick it up and put it inside and do all the things, make sure all the parts are there, that kind of fun stuff. So main thing in this, guys, short-term rentals are a business, and you want to make sure you are accounting and thinking about it like a business. I'm a huge fan of Profit First, the book, and funny enough, I've never actually read the book, but I've had enough people have told me the concept and I really like it. So I use a special bank called Relay to handle all of my transactions. If you guys want a more detailed view on them, or you want to talk a little bit more, again, just drop me a comment below. I'll be more than happy to make a video on that. But on Relay, I have separate accounts. I have the money coming in. I have money for my property taxes. I have money for profits. I have an OPEX account in case there's any emergency maintenance where my mortgage goes out of. And then I have an owner section, which is the money I have profits from this property. So I am big on credit card hacks. And one of the main ones I like to talk about is the hack you can do in real estate. So every time you buy a property, after you've closed on it, and make sure you've closed on this before you do it, because if you do it during, your house will get rejected. Banks do not like for you to open anything new until you've done buying. But once you buy a property and you're in the furnishing stage, or if you're going to hire a contractor, get cabinets, all that kind of stuff, I highly recommend getting a new credit card. And if you look for ones that have good bonus points on them, usually Chase Sapphire usually has some really good deals. There's an Ink one. I get those, and because we're buying, usually 15, 20, 30 grand worth of items into it, I make sure to put everything on the credit card, and I pay it off right away. I am taking no risks. This by no means is financial advice. That's just what I do. And I make sure I get it paid off. And that gets me all of these bonus points, which I then use to travel back to my Airbnbs, or I'll treat my husband and we'll take a trip of, Asia or Europe, or just do fun stuff. It's really fun to have your family involved in this process and kind of show them the path. Hey, if we did this, this would be really fun. There's tons of tutorials on credit card hacking. I generally don't have time to actually do a lot of it, but this is just a quick, easy one while you're setting up your property. Step 11, you are through financing and you have closed on the house. My husband and I have a little tradition. We go out to Sonic and we get a little ice cream and we eat that, I forgot what they're called, mini glass or whatever. But it's our little way of celebrating a closing on a property or selling a property. So once you've closed on the property, I don't want you guys to freak out, because this is the most scary, mentally exhausting part of the entire Airbnb journey, because you'll be at the house, you'll be receiving all this furniture, you're setting up. It's going to be really long days. Everybody's going to be high on their nerves, and you are going to be exhausted. Now, there are some key things I do in this process to make it less stressful. but after setting up so many properties, it still always happens. I do hire a designer because I'm not very good at interior design myself, and I don't really enjoy Pinterest. I'm just not that crafty about it. So I do hire designers who do a lot of my main furnishings, but I do have a very detailed checklist I go through once they've put everything together. And then I'll order little things like making sure my alarm clocks have USB plugs so that people can charge their phones, or making sure there's enough towels or enough linens, and making sure, especially a lot of the properties I have, they don't have any Home Depots or major stores around them. So I have to make sure everything gets shipped into those towns. If you are a great interior designer or you like it, this is definitely your time to shine, and I highly recommend you do that. But make sure you look at designs of other Airbnbs, and there's lots of articles about how to DIY your Airbnb, so make sure you read them. Just because the design element's a little bit different on how you design an Airbnb versus a traditional home. Or if you're like me and can't figure it out, or don't just have that color coordination, which I don't, I just outsource it. It's the best money I've ever spent. In terms of fees, because I do get asked this a lot, it really just depends on the designer. I've seen them as low as $1,000, and I've seen them as high as 30 to 50 grand. And again, it just depends on the property, the size, the designer, the level of experience. But whatever you do, make sure that designer has worked on Airbnbs before or has the capacity to kind of think through that. As always, if you guys want access to my master sheet, it is completely free. Just drop me a comment below. I'll put that link up too. So once I'm done putting all of my items up, the last step I do in this process is I make sure I video everything, and not just in terms of social media or what I'm thinking, but I'm literally thinking hey, I'm not going to be back at this property for a year. Where's the water heater? What year was it? What manufacturer? What code? Just every tiny little detail, everything gets videoed and gets put on a Google Drive. So my team who's never been on the properties, they can just open that, click on it, and be like, got it. Here's the serial number. Here's where the backup keys are located. Anything they may need is literally on a Google Drive, and they feel like they're genuinely at the property. The other thing I do like to shoot for is the content creation parts. If you're going to have an Instagram account, a Facebook account, we call it batch content, but basically just shooting everything now, but then posting it kind of throughout the few months that you're not going to be at the property, so it's kind of spaced out. While I'm doing all of the videoing, my brain is thinking about the Airbnb listing itself. What am I going to call it? How is it going to be phrased? And I make sure I get the listing done for that Airbnb while I'm in the property itself. This is really important because you have the vibe and the essence when you're in the property to go, oh, this is really tranquil. I could imagine myself sitting here and reading a book. And yeah, you can do that through the videos, once you get back home or whatever, but it makes such a difference in the quality of the listing when you think through it and you're like, here are the words, here's how I describe it when you're right there in the space. I also start thinking about my photo and how they'll be organized. At this time, we actually head right into step number 13, which is the photography. So once I'm kind of done setting up, I've taken all of my videos, I go ahead and set up a photographer. And I do have my housekeeping team come clean the property, maybe do a deep clean, especially if it's a new build and it's construction dust. I have them do a deep clean of the property. And then I tell them, hey, I want the place to be photo ready. So what does photo ready mean? It means they will put out the napkins in a really pretty way so it photographs well. They could put out a few wine glasses, maybe a bottle of wine, or maybe have a little espresso cup by the coffee machines. Little things like that to make it look really nice. Now, when you go to photography, you will get a little bit of a sticker shock. If the photographer is actually good, and I recommend you see their work before you pick them, and make sure they have Airbnb experience in terms of they're used to shooting content for Airbnb. And I have heard that Airbnb has their own photographers they recommend. I've personally never used them. I'm sure they're great. I just have no experience with them. For me, I've always just joined Facebook groups for that area and asked other short-term rental investors, hey, who was your photographer? Can you send me an Airbnb link? I'll look at their photos on their link. If I like it, I'll contact that photographer. These things can be expensive. I've seen quotes from anywhere from $500 to $2, $3, $4 grand. And if the photographer is actually good, I highly recommend you make that money. People book with their eyes first and then everything else. That's what gets them to click on your listing and then see your words. So do not skimp on this. Photos are back and my listing description is ready to go. I go ahead and bundle everything up and we are live on Airbnb. Now, if you're planning to do this kind of as a side thing, and you're like, I'm not really going to buy any more. I'm not going to co-host. I'm not going to do any of that. Just one. You can literally just stick with the Airbnb platform. You don't need to worry about getting a property management software and blah, blah, blah. There's just so much. Airbnb has a pretty good native tool for you to be able to have the listing description, get all your photos uploaded and posted on there. And then after a few months, if you're like, oh, this is really fun, but you know what? I want to be on VRBO or I want to do direct booking, then we can definitely start thinking about getting onto a property management software. I personally have a big software stack, and I'll talk about that more in step 14. But don't freak out, guys. Like this is really easy, and just stick to Airbnb. I know they have a pricing tool. I'm personally not crazy about it. I think I can charge a lot more for my properties, but I do know a lot of people who use Airbnb's pricing software and make a lot of money. Step 14, the software stack. Now, there is a big software stack you can have. Mine is pretty simple on here. I use Owner Rez for my property management. This is where all of my listings stay, and then it's integrated with Airbnb, VRBO, and direct booking. And then I use Pricelabs for my pricing, even though I am currently looking at a different model. We'll see how that goes. Pricelabs allows you to have kind of dynamic pricing. So maybe it's lower on the weekdays, maybe it's higher on the weekends, just depends on your market. And it also gives you a lot of market data about what is happening in your specific market. Congratulations, you literally went from the journey where you thought about, should I buy an Airbnb, all the way to coming to the very end of this video, going, hey, maybe I bought my first property and we are now live. If you guys want my tips on listing optimization, what you can do to increase your revenue, drop me a comment below. I'll be more than happy to make that for you. I hope you found this video useful. If you did, consider hitting the like and subscribe button and sharing this with your friends, and drop a comment below and let me know what else you guys want me to talk about. I do this for a living, and I manage about 50 properties, so I do see this business inside and out every single day. Happy to share any other information. Thank you so much for watching, you guys. Thank you so much for watching, you guys. If you found any value in this, or if you're looking to get any more information, I do interview a lot of people in this space, and I'll put a link below here. You can watch any of my videos with other Airbnb investors. Bye, guys.